Welcome to the Lifestyle First podcast, discussing lifestyle medicine and making self-care as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1 question, 2 research reviews, and 3 actionable health tips, all centered around the Lifestyle First method, your blueprint for the 10 key routes of optimal health and happiness. And now your host, lifestyle medicine physician and coach, Dr. Alka Patel.
Hello and welcome to Series 7, Episode 10 of the Lifestyle First podcast. Now, the theme that we're focusing on today is first, focusing on commitment and confidence. And the one question that we're asking is, how can you harness commitment to reach your goals? So to answer that, I'm delighted to introduce you to my guest today, who is Dr. Heidi Reader. Dr. Reader, she is the author of Commit to Win, How to Harness the 4 Elements of Commitment to Reach Your Goals. And she is a Carnegie Foundation award-winning professor at Boise State University, where she's the director of the Leadership Certificate Program in the School of Public Service. And she's got degrees in communication, and she's authored research articles for many, many leading journals. And she has an organization called Success Tracks, where she is on a mission to help individuals to lead with confidence and authenticity. So Heidi, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Dr. Patel. I'm excited to talk with you about this.
Oh, absolutely. Commitment, commitment, commitment. It is a mighty word, isn't it? So what I wondered maybe was if you could start off with telling us what commitment is and what commitment isn't.
Yeah, I love that first question because I think sometimes when people hear the word commitment, it sounds like they're getting locked down in something, maybe something that they don't want, right? We use the word commitment pretty casually at times, like, oh, I committed to going to my son's, best friend's, mother's party and oh God, I got to go, right? And that's not really the way that commitment is intended to be used. And it doesn't really help us reach our goals when we use commitment in that way. And so I like to use the definition of commitment from the field of psychology and social psychology particularly, which is having a deep attachment, a psychological attachment to something and a desire to continue despite obstacles. So that's coming more from within yourself. Like I feel psychologically attached to this job, relationship, goal, sport, eating style, meditation. I feel pulled to continue despite obstacles versus I'm being pulled from the outside or I'm being pushed around by someone else's desire for me to do something.
Yeah. So that creates this real strength to commitment as well, doesn't it? But then is that the same as motivation? Because that's the other word that's coming up in my mind when we talk about commitment and motivation and drive. So a commitment and motivation, the same thing then?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think motivation gets you started. Commitment gets you to the goal. You see what I'm saying? Because I think I could wake up any particular morning and feel motivated or not motivated. But if I'm committed, I'm going to keep moving forward, even if I don't maybe feel particularly motivated on that particular day. And that's huge, right? That's huge because if I don't feel motivated to be in a relationship with my husband on that particular day, thank God I have commitment. You know what I mean? Otherwise, things would be falling apart all around us. So commitment is the sustaining factor. And so we want more of that, not just the fleeting motivation. Good to have both.
Yeah, that's really funny you brought that up because I used to have a word I used with my children as they were growing up. It was one of my favorite words, and it's stickability. And stickability seems to harness that sense of commitment because they didn't want to practice piano and they didn't want to practice their guitar. They weren't motivated, but you know what? They had commitment to it. They'd committed to it. So they needed that stickability to see it through. So that's a really, really kind of interesting differentiation. And I think really helpful as well, that sense that you can still be committed even if you don't have that bit of motivation on any particular day.
Right. Yeah. Good question and distinction.
Definitely. So in your book, then, you talk about 4 variables, don't you, that influence our level of commitment. I'd love you to dive into those if you could.
Yeah. So, a lot of people just think of commitment of like, I'm either committed or I'm not, and I've got to I've got to just be committed. Like it's just a decision point. And there is a decision point, but there's a lot behind that. And I'm not making this up. This is based on, piles and piles, probably over 100 articles by now. It was 50 at the time that I wrote the book, that show that this formula really predicts how committed we'll be. And what the formula is how much do I really treasure and value the goal that I'm working toward? What are all the rewards that I get from it? Is that a high level? How much trouble? So it's treasures, troubles, contributions, and choices. So how much do I treasure this goal versus how troubling it is? What are the annoying difficulties that get in the way? How much have I already contributed to it? How much have I already given to it? And then what are all the other options that I have? And maybe it would be helpful to look at a specific example to see how those play out. So let's say that I want to start going to the gym more frequently. And I've got myself this gym membership. And what do I treasure about going to the gym? And they may be extrinsic treasures, like, I really treasure looking fitter. I treasure like being able to lift more weights and being able to impress people. And maybe it's intrinsic. Maybe it's like, I want to feel more energetic. I like the process of the particular activities I've chosen. So in order to be committed, we've got to really focus on how much we really value and treasure what we're getting in that process. And then there's sort of a subtraction, but it's minus how difficult is it? Do I feel dumb trying to learn how to use the weight system, or going to the class and I feel like an idiot because everybody else looks like they know what they're doing and I don't? Or maybe the gym I've joined is really far from my house. We think of those as excuses, but really they're things that literally get in our way. And so I don't like thinking of them as excuses. I like thinking of them as obstacles to find a workaround for, because we want to really treasure what we're doing and we want to minimize how troubling it is to go through that process. But then we add on, how much have we already contributed to this goal? Have I bought weights at home? Have I purchased a long-term membership? Have I told my friends how important this is to me? Have I set an external goal? And maybe I've told somebody, hey, if I don't reach this goal, I'm going to give you $100 to give to a charity that I don't like, because I want to invest myself in this. How can I get myself really invested? The more invested we are, that carries the commitment all along, even if we don't feel motivated on certain days, right? Because we sort of have to do it, right? And then finally, we've got to take away our other options. There's so many distractions in life that if we have a bunch of other choices, a bunch of other things that we could do instead, I wake up and I could, watch a TV show on Netflix or something instead of going to the gym. I've got to cut out those choices, take those away and off the table so I can keep focused on my commitment. So how much do I treasure it? Minus what are the troubles that it causes me? Plus how much have I contributed already? Minus how many choices do I have? Does that make sense? It's kind of a mathematical equation a bit. It's sometimes easier to see than to hear.
No, it completely makes sense. It really just crystallizes, almost helps to just sort of compartmentalize that matrix when it comes to choice, because ultimately in the middle of that, there is choice, but that choice is then driven by your treasures and your troubles and your contributions and your alternative options.
Exactly. And we're not going to be very committed if we're really focusing just on how difficult it is and how many other choices we have, which is what we do sometimes, right? We go, well, this is really hard and I could do all these other things. Whoa. We've got to bring back into our matrix, how much do we value it? And let me start contributing to it, even in small ways, to get myself the energy going in the right direction.
So yeah, there's something about commitment and really understanding how much value you place upon it, how important it is for you, because unless you've got that strong burning desire, you won't actually create that equation for commitment with you, will you? But I also think a lot of the time, it's the obstacles, it's the troubles, isn't it? We don't plan for the troubles. We don't sort of decide what we're going to do about them until they're right up close and personal. And I think there's something about almost planning for the obstacles, knowing that life is never going to be a straight line. It's going to veer us off. But what are you going to do instead? The gym might be closed. So what are you going to do at home? Yes, it's raining outside. So what exercise can you do inside instead? It's almost sort of that troubleshooting for your troubles, isn't it?
Troubleshoot your troubles. It really is. I recommend that people actually write down even the tiny things that annoy them about whatever they're working toward, right? Whether it's writing a book or it's improving their nutrition, whatever that, it's expensive, it's this, it's that, and then troubleshoot those. Not just go, oh, well, if I was committed, I would ignore those things. No, they're going to be in your face at some point, right? Like you said, you wake up and it's raining outside. And the other thing I think about what you said is that sometimes we get attached to being committed in a certain way. Like if I was committed, I would go to the gym and do this particular activity. Think about the higher commitment, like what could I do at home? Think about the larger goal, not just doing it in a particular way. You may have to adapt what you're committed to, right? Let's say I don't make it all the way to the end of writing a book, but could I get a blog series out there? What else meets the real need, the underlying need, the real why behind what I'm doing?
Yeah, it's back to that sense of goal and reaching that goal, but also recognizing the joy is in the journey, isn't it? And actually, the journey may end up taking you in a different direction to that one goal that you set, but it's still got a huge amount of value because you've committed to that journey. So the blogs come out instead of the book coming out, which was your initial goal. Right. So I think that's really important as well, is that you're also committing to not just the goal when you're talking about change, but you're committing to the journey of change itself.
That's huge right there, because, and I've just learned this really deeply myself lately, where you can have a goal and you actually don't have 100% control over whether that goal will happen. Like you say, I really want to commit to this relationship and be in it forever. Well, not all of that is within your control. I really want to write a book and get it published and get a certain amount of reader. Well, they're committing to the things that you can control in the process is far more powerful than committing to the you're committing to the outcome. You're committing to being in the process is really what you're doing. So finding joy in that process, finding the joy in the little successes, just huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And we forget that, don't we? And we really have to make sure that we give ourselves some space for that celebration and that enjoyment and that joy in the moment as well, for sure. So I wanted to ask another question then, a little bit on the back of that. But do you think commitment is part of our instinct? Do you think it's innate in us? Or do you think it's something that we have to work at? Is it part of our genetic makeup, our human makeup, our humanity, or is it something outside of us?
That's a great question, because again, I think there's misnomers around this where we say commitment and it sounds like this grand thing, like, oh, it's the Lance Armstrongs of the world that are really committed, and I'm just measly old me. And it takes a special person to have such, a couple that has been married for 50 years, we all go, wow. But I would definitely argue that it's very instinctual. We have deep commitment to our social interactions with each other. We have deep commitment to staying alive. We have, we have deep commitment to living a life that's meaningful to us. We all have that. We all have that innately in us. And I think about examples like sometimes you hear stories in the news about a pet getting lost, a far distant from its owner, and like being so determined to get back to its owner that it walks miles and miles and miles to get back to its owner. And I'm thinking, if a pet can be that determined, that's got to tell us something about what it is to be alive. And in fact, I would argue that, we really wouldn't be alive as a species without commitment. We really wouldn't. We have to commit to our goals or we don't get to the next phase of our evolution, our innovation, right? We don't band together and commit to one another as a tribe, as a human race. If we don't do that, we don't survive. So commitment is deep, deep inside us. The other thing I would point to is if you look at kids, little kids, not teenagers, okay? We're looking at little kids, how deeply invested they can be in certain things. There's some kids in my neighborhood right now that want to build a tree house. And they are going door to door. I know, because they just knocked on my door yesterday, asking if people have extra lumber because they are so determined to build this tree house. And so you just look at that kind of determination and commitment that we all had when we were young. We can carry that through to our goals as adults.
Yeah. And that's lovely. I think, again, you've just highlighted one of those four elements of your equation there, the treasures. If you look at things sometimes with child eyes, they're just so excited about building this tree house, aren't they? They're seeing it as something of value, and that's driving their commitment. They're probably not even thinking about obstacles, like who's going to have wood and lumber. Why am I going to? They're not even thinking about that. They're just so driven by what they love. So that's really lovely to think about that. Maybe just start to look at things with our child eyes again, in order to keep our commitment going. And that kind of recognition that, actually, you're right, commitment is part of our survival mechanism, isn't it? It's actually part of our evolutionary process. And I think, again, remembering that is that we're designed to commit, but the world is designed to send obstacles our way.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, I like that.
And now, here is your lifestyle first prescription. Your 3 activating actions to take you from knowing to doing.
3 actions that listeners can take so that we can really think about how do we enforce that commitment, perhaps using your equation or other things that you can think would be really useful for us.
Yeah. Well, the first has to do with treasures. And I've made a note here, so I'm looking over at that to make sure I say this the way that I want to. Define what you wish to commit to and the meaningful why behind it. So you might say to yourself, well, I want to commit to losing 10 pounds, but what's the meaningful why behind it? And what I mean by the meaningful why is something internal, not, so I'll fit into this dress. I mean, that's nice too, but if you can add in a real why, like I want to know that I can stick with something. I want to feel lighter. I want to feel better. I want to, have it be something, a real why for you can really bring out the best. Yeah. So 1, define what you want to commit to and the meaningful why behind it. And then the troubles, identify the things in your way, look them in the face and brainstorm workarounds. So that's what I was saying about actually make a list. Like it might seem strange, but like, here's all the things in the back of my mind that are getting in my way. Let me put them on paper and actually design workarounds. Like if I have trouble finding parking at the gym and I'm just driving around and it's annoying, maybe I put on some kind of my favorite music, while I'm doing it. And that becomes like a fun part of my day to kind of jam out or something like that. And then 3rd, imagine you are your future self who has followed through on your commitment. Write yourself a letter describing the outcomes and feelings you have as a result. And I did that before I wrote the book, Commit to Win. I wrote out like, hey, just so you know, we published the book and here's all the great things that happen. I get to talk with awesome people about it and, on and on and on. And this is how I feel about myself. And then I tucked that away. And then, it is so rewarding when you reach the goal in whatever way you reach it to pull that letter back out. But it is a form of motivation, which really helps get you started on the road to commitment.
Oh, I love that idea of that envisioning your future self and writing that letter from your future self. It really just gives it some real grit as well, doesn't it? And then you've manifested, and here we are chatting today. So there we go.
Oh, that's great.
Amazing. Really love that, Heidi. I think those are 3 really, really important things to commit to. I think if we're committed to being committed, then those are 3 really very, very useful actions to really take. So thank you so much, Heidi. And I'm sure people are going to want to find out more, because commitment is something that we talk about a lot. Every new year we're talking about commitment as well, aren't we? So that's a whole new topic and New Year's resolutions, I'm sure. But what is the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, my website is my name. So www, that's not my name, HeidiReader.com. And that's HeidiReeder.com. And there's ways to reach out to me there.
Amazing. Great. So I'll definitely put those links in the notes for everybody. And thank you so much. This has been a really inspiring conversation. Really grateful for all your insights. And I'm going to take a deeper dive into your book for sure. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Patel. My pleasure.
You're very, very welcome. Which now leaves me simply to wish everybody a happy, healthy day.
Thanks for joining us on the Lifestyle First podcast, making self-care as easy as 1, 2, 3. Don't forget to subscribe and share, and we'd love it if you'd be kind enough to leave a review. To learn more or to arrange a consultation, please visit www.dralkapatel.com. See you next time.